Hello? Where? Oh no! Somebody help me! I think I'm trapped in a podcast. Somebody, please. Hello, welcome back to Articulate with Steve McJones. I'm Steve McJones, and today Hannah Pridemore comes on to talk about Articulate with Steve McJones. Isn't that meta? She kind of explains who she is. I don't need to really give her an introduction, but I just want to say this is one of the few, I don't really get nervous about recording episodes anymore because, it's my show. I've been doing it for a while. I see how many listens they get. I'm not too worried about them typically, and it's pretty fun for me. But this one was interesting. This one, it got me nervous and a little excited, but yeah, I think it was a good reflection a little bit for me on the podcast, and a lot of the things that I'm saying are coming out in the moment. I didn't write down any answers. I didn't know what questions she was going to ask. So yeah, I think it's pretty insightful on to how I started the podcast, what reasons I got into it, and a lot of other stuff. So enjoy. Hello. Hey, Hannah. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited for this. Let me tell you, I've never been interviewed before.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I'm usually the interviewer. But I should let you know, I told you I was going to record this for the podcast, if that's cool. And I just wanted to reaffirm that that's okay with you.
Yes, that's perfectly fine. And are you also okay with being recorded so I can transcribe it later so I actually know how to write the story?
No, actually. I'm kidding. That's fine. You're good.
It's like, shit, I gotta take notes.
No, you're good. Would you mind just kind of stating who you are and where you're from and your major and all that stuff for me?
Yeah, I'm Hannah. I'm from Wilmington, Ohio. It's around the Dayton area. I'm a senior at OU, and I'm majoring in journalism strategic communications.
Okay, that's fun. And then one thing that you think is fun about yourself. No, I'm just kidding. It's all those
Fun fact.
yeah, all those classes, those class introductions that we've gone through every single semester.
Yes, I think it was orientation. They had us. They were tossing a beach ball around, and whichever one I think it was your left thumb landed on was the icebreaker question that you had to answer.
Oh yeah.
And mine was say a quote from SpongeBob, and that will forever stay in my mind. It was just the most bizarre icebreaker I've ever had to go through.
It is. What was the quote?
I'm trying to think.
One that has recently become my favorite. There's this scene in the SpongeBob episode where SpongeBob's gonna blow up. I don't know if you remember that one, and Squidward has to learn to be nice to him. But he's saying something like, "Oh, SpongeBob I'm gonna give him so much love, he's gonna drown in it." And then somebody quoted that on Twitter, and they were like, British people when they see a drone in the sky. It was one of my favorites, personally.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think it was he was number one. Wolverine Jetson was a classic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, a floating grocery list? Yeah, no. Good stuff. So, would you mind describing Thread a little bit, the magazine? I actually personally don't know that much about it. I know my friend Stephen Barrett was on it. The Creamy Studios guys were on there.
Yeah. Okay. Thread is a student-created and student-run fashion magazine at OU. So part of it does encompass just kind of global fashion. We do have sections that are strictly related to Athens because we do try to keep it as local as possible.
Oh,
and
nice.
the section your story is going to be included in is who, what, where. So we have a person, a place, and then usually clothing. So you're the person in this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we do trends and social justice issues. Our features can be really heavy hitting. For the issue that we're about to drop next week or the week after, it's how to start a Black Lives Matter movement in your area.
Oh, wow.
Our gender reveal party's getting out of hand, and that story just really like dives into like the science behind gender and sex, and it's like it's a really good story. I think that's my favorite one in the issue that I've edited so far.
That's awesome. Did you hear about Elliot Page?
I did, yes.
That's so exciting. It's really exciting.
I saw when I opened Twitter like an hour or so ago, I kept seeing, I was like, Elliot Page, like who in the world is Elliot Page? And then finally I had a picture to go with the letter.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, yes, I do know who Elliot Page is.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So do you work on the entire magazine, like with a team, or is it just you working on a certain part, or I don't really know. And also, how long have you been with Thread, actually?
Okay, those questions go easily hand in hand. So
Right.
I started freshman year as a staff writer,
Okay.
and I was just like writing for every issue. I would pitch for stories and stuff like that. And then my sophomore year, I became a section editor. So for that, I only had to edit stories in a certain section.
Okay.
And junior year and this year, I'm editor-in-chief, which means I do the whole shebang. Like, at the end of this week, I will sit down and edit every story in the magazine. And there's, I'm trying to think, maybe 12 of us in total on the exec board. There's me, the section editors, copy editor, managing editor, photo editor, web editor.
Whoa, yeah. Yeah, and you're above all of them?
Yes.
Yo, congrats.
But it doesn't. We all feel like we're on a very even playing ground.
Yeah, of course, we're all level and we're all equal and you love all of them. But, Hannah, you don't downplay yourself here, right? Come on. It's pretty hardcore, if you ask me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I set a goal freshman year. Is like, by senior year, I will be editor-in-chief of Thread. So I think that's kind of the only goal that I set that I stuck with.
Hey, that is why setting goals are important, right? Because if it's the only goal that you set, you achieved it, So imagine more goals that you set, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's exciting. No, it's funny. We met I think it was freshman year. Yeah, because I was still roommates with Miles.
We actually had that 9 a.m. that was horrendous.
Right, when I was a communication major for a semester. Yeah, no, that was 9 a.m.'s not my favorite, that's for sure. Especially that one in that big lecture hall. Nobody wanted to be there. And
You're over 145.
You know it well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you always interested in journalism and stuff before? Like, when did you kind of decide on that major?
Well, in 8th grade, my English teacher suggested joining the journalism program.
8th grade?
Yeah.
Yo.
In our high school. And I was like, oh, sure, that sounds fun. Like, not knowing what the hell I was getting myself into.
Right.
Like, I didn't even know that we had a school newspaper or anything. And then I just stuck with it. By the end of it, I was like, I went from, like I did with Thread, a staff writer to an editor to editor-in-chief. And by the time it came to getting to decide what to major in for college, I was like, okay, journalism, like that's it. I don't know what else I would do.
Just because you know it so well. Yeah, that's awesome. Do you? And that's a great resume right there. You're already probably ready to move on to the next stage, right? Have you looked into what you're gonna be doing afterwards?
Oh my gosh, I have, and it's stressful. Like,
of
the
course.
job hunt is just so stressful, especially because, well, I guess with like COVID and everything,
Sure.
a lot of people aren't hiring. On top of
Right.
journalism, jobs aren't really posted until spring semester. So like, I'm sitting in like a dull panic because there's nothing I can do right now. But I'm like worried.
Yeah. No, I personally am. I guess I graduated at the end of the semester, right? So within a week, and I didn't sign an offer letter until like 3 weeks ago, So, I don't think you should worry too much about it. Again, especially with all the credentials you have, you're going to be fine. Plus, I don't know. I feel like I don't know you obviously that well, but, based on what I do know about you, I think you're very driven and I don't know. Again, you just based off your credentials, I think you'll be fine. You shouldn't. Worrying is one of the most stupidest things a human being could do, right? I just feel like it causes too much anxiety, and yeah.
Well, thank you. That's the pep talk I needed after checking LinkedIn for like 40 minutes for no
Yeah.
reason, and I knew it was for no reason. But
Right. Have you got on Handshake at all?
I have, yes, and I
Okay.
saved a bunch of stuff there, and I'll probably check more out after the semester ends. This week is just full of final projects.
Right. Finals and stuff. Yeah, yeah. I know how that whole thing goes, but no, but Handshake is actually like run through Ohio University, right? And so it's really interesting. I think it's just really the easiest way. You know, it limits the amount of jobs and types of jobs that you can look through, but like the less jobs that are posted on a website, the more of those companies are going to, you know, they're going to be avidly looking through. Oh, they're like, oh, this is a student from Ohio University. You know what I mean? You can pull up all the information you need about that student and what they need to know, and it's already like a connection right there. And I don't know. I think it's a really good place to look for jobs. And I would hope there's handshakes throughout for like all colleges and whatnot. But I don't know. I always like to promote Handshake. That's how I got my job.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Right. Well, and like a recruiter reached out to me through that. And the thing about recruiters is like they walk you through the entire interview process and they want you to get hired because that's their job, right? So it just gives you a direct advantage over people who are just like, well, I'll apply to this one, you know, and it's somebody like telling you what you should prepare for within each interview. But anyways, sorry, I got off on a tangent. I don't think you should worry about it. You're gonna be fine. I'm excited for you, and yeah, I'm excited for this interview. So, how do you usually do this? How do you usually conduct interviews?
Well, I usually write up a list of 5 to 10 questions beforehand that I just like cover the basics to make sure that I have somewhere to start off on, and it's always good to have like branch out questions during the interview. So if you say something completely off the wall, I'm going to be like,
Which I will.
Elaborate.
Yeah.
More.
For sure. Yeah. Well, if you are ready to go ahead and fire off some of these questions, I'm definitely in.
Okay. Just the basics. Could you tell me about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Alec Bolger, but I go by Steve McJones because it's tight. It came about when I was in like 6th grade. Some high schooler, I was hanging around like in a neighborhood, and you know, of course, high schoolers are always the coolest people in the world. And it was just like, you know what, you look like more of like a Steve McJones, and I was like, that's it, that's me for the rest of my life now. And and yeah, so that's basically where I started the development of who I am, which is funny. People always ask, they're like why do you go by like how are you Steve? And I'm just like, I'm pretty good. How are you? I'm sorry. I like to use that joke a lot. But in general, I'm a hospitality major. I am no longer going to be in hospitality. I'm switching out of that because I did it through college because it was something I knew and something that came easy to me. And it's a similar situation with you about how, you know, I started when I was like 15 in at just like a small mom and pop restaurant, and then worked my way up to be a team manager. And then I worked at this hotel, the OU Inn and Conference Center, when I was a freshman, then worked my way up, and I was actually just doing an MIT position there that was kind of also a restaurant management position role. But I also found out that industry is very, very tiring and exhausts all of your time and energy, which is good. Honestly, it keeps you, keeps you focused, and it's really good money. But right now the industry is in the toilet because of COVID. And I've always had a passion. I did film club when I was a sophomore in high school, and being a depressed and anxious teenager, obviously I needed some form of escapism. And comedians, TV, and movies were always my escape, my go-to escape thing that I did. Distraction, basically, which kind of grew into a passion my sophomore year. And I started script writing and reading books about how to write and stories and things like that. And I went and did stand-up that summer, which I'm a really big fan of stand-up. And yeah, and then I started the podcast last year because, it kind of just went hand in hand with everything. And the podcast, it started out a little shaky. It was a little rough, I think. And I had not a great microphone, but it soon became a part of me. It soon became a part of who I am because, I kind of started last September, and that was before anything got weird, and that was like when I was a junior in college, which is kind of a big deal. Like right as you turn 21, I think that's a big age for a lot of people. And then it kind of grew with me through that year, through coronavirus, and then up until now. And people that I meet, it's almost like a scrapbook for me. You know what I mean? It's like all the people that I meet and have on are just like little snippets of a memory that I have in my life. So it's definitely become a part of who I am. And that was a very long answer to your short question. So I hope I covered so a good amount of things.
No, that was literally the best response I could have gotten. When it comes to interviews, it's the short answers are always the worst. And sometimes you get ramblers who say a whole lot of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're lucky, like you just did, you gave me a really good response with a lot of information. That's very helpful.
All right, awesome. Well, I've been in the interview industry a little bit as well. Just back and forth.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
Right.
Okay. How did it start? Like, how did you get it off the ground?
Yeah. So one night, it was like I said, it was August, September time, my junior year of college, which was it's been over a year now, and I remember so something that my brother and I always say to each other. We always say porch time is the best time because he's like my older brother is 28 years old and he's hanging out with someone who's older than you all the time. You kind of get a lot of knowledge and kind of fun experiences and just kind of perspective a little bit from somebody who's living as an adult. And porch time is always the best time to have the best conversations. Like, I don't know why, but there's something about sitting out on a porch that really, you're watching things unfold in front of you, and you're looking in that direction, but it's actually just you and one other person in that environment. So there's always something to comment on, but there's also a conversation that can unfold from that. And I don't know, there was something really great about porch time. And so we always say porch time is the best time. And then I thought porch time was the best time, but my junior year, I had roof access directly outside of my room. So I would like roll out of my bed onto the roof, and I would have people over there, and we'd sit out there and hang out and look at the beautiful stars in Athens all the time, and kind of have an overlook of the uptown area. And then I figured that roof time is just an elevated form of porch time. And I had a buddy out there that we were kind of just talking about the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, you just have really good conversations. He agreed. And he's like, man, we should start a podcast about roof time and call it Roof Time, the Roof Time podcast or something. And this was after a period where I started reading books about writing and screenplays and just kind of getting more into my passions and diving a little bit more into them. And so I kind of had a lot to say at that point. When you're taking in a lot, you kind of want to output a lot as well. So I thought the idea of a podcast was always great, and I'd always be interested. I was addicted to Twitter in high school and everybody wants their time in the spotlight or whatever. And I was like, well, I should start a podcast. And there's always things that you think you should do, and then you never end up doing them. But there was one night when I think I had caffeine too late in the night or something, and I was just laying all night thinking about this idea of the podcast. And it was like 3 a.m, and at that point, I'm like, all right, I just have to do something. I can't just sit here and not do anything about it. And because if I do, I'm just going to forget, or I'm not going to dedicate myself to it or whatever. So I woke up at like 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, got out of bed and drove to Walmart because I knew they were 24 hours, and went and picked up a microphone. And from that point, I was like, if I bought the microphone, I have to do it, right? Like, there's no way back now. And then so that kind of started my commitment to uploading an episode weekly.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, if you have it, you might as well put it to use. You've already spent the money.
Right, exactly. I'm not just going to let it go to waste. And I think that's a very important lesson that can be learned for everybody. If you, like gym memberships, like if you're paying for a gym membership, hopefully that, inspires you to actually go to the gym and work out. And finances are important, but that's a different topic. Anyways.
You're good. So why did you come up with the name Articulate instead of porch time or roof time?
Yeah. Well, so it kind of adapted after that because I knew I wasn't always going to have a roof, right? And I knew there wasn't always going to be a porch. And plus, like, if we tried to record on the roof of the porch, wind would come about and mess up the recording and audio and whatnot, or bugs or outside sirens or neighbors. So, I still wanted to express the ideas that we were presented during roof time and porch time, which is really just kind of exploring people's perspectives. And I think when people are able to articulate their thoughts well, I think it's that articulation that really see, I can't even do it right now. I'm not articulating well, but I think there's a quote about the best ideas are some that can't even be spoken into words. Like Marcus Aurelius in Gladiator said something like, the idea of Rome could only be spoken as a whisper because it was so powerful, or something like that. And so there are really, really solid and amazing ideas and philosophies and interesting concepts of growing up and, religion and politics and gender norms, just all these, there's so many big things in the world, and coming of age, growing up, maturing. There were so many topics that I wanted to cover, so I couldn't nail it down to one topic, but I could nail it down to the idea of, while these ideas are so powerful that it's tough for them to be put into words, I think it's important to try, to try to articulate these ideas. And obviously, I mean, that was a year and a half ago, so I don't think I thought as in depth about it as I am right now. But that sounds pretty good to me,
Oh yeah, okay. What is the premise of the podcast, if there is any?
Yeah, well, so again, it's kind of expressing those ideals, but it's kind of definitely formed into something different than what was originally intended. And so the idea behind the podcast is it's articulate with Steve McJones, but it's not there are episodes that I do kind of express my own ideals. I usually try to do about one or two a season, and a season's only 10 episodes long, where I just kind of talk about where I am in life and kind of some realizations that I've had and whatnot. And those are more for me, for sure. But outside of that, it kind of developed into what, each episode is about the guest in that moment. So what does the guest want to come on and talk about to me? So it's not, again, you can't nail it down to one topic, but it's more about, what is this person passionate enough to talk for 30 minutes to an hour about, like what do they really enjoy about life? What makes life worth living and getting up every day possible for them? And that's kind of where, I love hearing people talk about their passions, and that's kind of what it's turned into. That's kind of what it's about for me, at least.
Fantastic. How many guests have you had? If you can estimate, I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah. I'm not for sure. If I have 61 episodes out now, probably at least 25 of those are just me. Maybe less than 20. Nah, that's probably a pretty good estimate. Maybe 20 of those are just me. And then, so what? 60 minus 20 is 40. So probably about 40 guests, including the ones where I have multiple guests on. So that's quite a bit. I didn't even think about that, actually.
Nice. What is your favorite episode?
My favorite episode? Okay, off the record, real quick. What are your thoughts? Am I allowed to mention drugs at all? You would prefer not. All right, cool. We won't talk about it. All right, back on the record.
Okay.
I have a few favorite episodes. One that comes to mind specifically is Porch Time. We actually did a Porch Time episode, which was awesome. It was over this past summer with my best friend Lucas and my two roommates that I met over the summer, Sonam and Lawson. That were just really cool guys. I was so lucky to just stumble into an apartment with them at one point, and we just sit on the back porch and just talk about the universe and society as it's crumbling and growing, and It was really fun and exciting, and there were a lot of ideals expressed in that. Another one that I really enjoyed making personally was my juvie story, just because.
I did listen to that one.
Yeah, I did. I am 21, by the way, so this wasn't illegal. I did a drunk history type thing. So it was, juvie was a huge thing for me, but I don't want it. I don't want it to be like my identity, because not that people would make fun of me necessarily afterwards, but I didn't want people to think that I was harping on like just living off the juvie story or whatever. So I made an episode to just reference anytime somebody asks about it at this point.
That's fair. I've heard you mention it in passing before, so when I got the notification for that episode, I was like, I have to listen to it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've told the story so many times, so to make it interesting, I did like the drunk history type of thing where I was plastered for it, and but I think it started off a little rough because I was pretty drunk, but I actually got some emotions out through that episode that I didn't know I needed to work through, and it was really beneficial for my mental health, I think. And again, now I can kind of just shelf it since I've figured it out and not really have to talk about it anymore.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
How long do you think it'll last?
Well, I'm hoping to develop some form of AI that knows all of my phrases and go-to topics and things like that. Kind of like Joe Rogan. One day, if I just put out enough content, I think there should be a computer that can analyze me as a personality, and then it can just continue on forever after I die. Like they'll just set up the AI and bring just any guest on, and then the guest will just continue asking. They'll just keep pumping out episodes. It's just a machine at that point. So hopefully forever, but realistically, I have no idea. I know that life changes with new jobs, and moving places. I'm about to move to New Jersey next month, and I don't have any intention of stopping, but I won't know a lot of people out there, so I'm going to have to get real creative with it. I try to adapt like I did during the pandemic and try to come up with different ideas. So for all intents and purposes, hopefully never until I die, but who knows?
Okay. I feel like that makes sense. It's just kind of existing while it can.
Right.
What are your plans for post-grad? I know so many people have probably asked you this by now, and you're sick of answering what you're doing.
I'm glad you acknowledged that, at least, but I'm just kidding. It's not, I mean, it's still really exciting for me because graduating is a really big deal. It's not like graduating from high school where you think it's a big deal and then you show up and you're like, oh, another 4 years of school, basically. This is tight. I plan on moving out to New Jersey, and maybe I haven't even got out there. Maybe it's not as exciting as I'm working it up to be, but I think it's a little different. But I finally, so like I said, I'm trying to get out of the hospitality industry, and I took this job that a recruiter kind of offered for me, and it's a mortgage loan sales job, and I think probably the most boring combination of words is mortgage loan and probably sales at the end there. I don't know. Mortgage is just a word that it just has no chemistry with anything else. But what's interesting about it is they do a year-long program that they integrate you into the company, and it's in New Jersey. And so the whole point of me taking this job is because I do want to pursue, my goal is to pursue a career in entertainment, whether that be stand-up, acting, writing, whatever it is. I'm not trying to be famous, but if it happens, it happens, But I really, again, that was my escape when I was in high school, and it has always been my go-to when I'm down, reading into comedians like Dave Chappelle or, who's not canceled at this point. Yeah, but comedians and then directors and actors that I really love. So my ultimate goal is to go. Originally, before the pandemic, I had an internship set up in New York, and it was going to be great, and I was going to be able to meet creative-minded people or similar-minded people, and try to do stand-up while having that full-time job set up. But then after, recently, after everything happened, it was looking like I was going to have to take a job in the hospitality industry, which, again, I know it, and I'm not trying to front, but I'm good. I'm really good at it. But it's also very, very time consuming. So to pursue a career in entertainment, you have to have nights and weekends off so that you can go do stand up during the week and you can go try classes, acting classes and stuff that are set up for people with full-time jobs. So yeah, that's why I took the job, and that's what it ended up. I think it's gonna be really beneficial, at least in one sense, because it's a great job. It's got benefits, it pays well, all that sort of stuff. It's gonna be my security, but I also am still getting to pursue what I want to do and what my dream is, and that's what's after graduation for me.
Wow, it sounds like you have it all at least figured out for the next year.
Yeah, I mean, again, everything changes so quickly nowadays. We have no idea what's going to happen. But I'm hoping by the summertime, I'll be able to get acclimated to the area. And then by the summertime, things start to open up again. Stand up hasn't been able to happen, unfortunately. But, comedians are not very patient people. And hopefully by the next summer, they'll have figured out a way to at least entertain, if it's an outdoor area or making everything safe and whatnot. I don't know if you had to put this in, but I actually saw that they do. So for stand up, they put, I saw people, they obviously make everybody wear masks and gloves and whatnot, but they put like a little condom over the microphone and people like change it out every time they go up there. And, yeah, I don't have everything figured out yet, but working towards it.
Nice. Do you have any other podcast ideas?
It's actually interesting that you asked that. It would be... So this main podcast is great. The Articulate is great because I can just do whatever I want with it. It's my baby. I can upload basically any type of episode that I want. I can do characters. I can do a radio show. I can do an interview, which is great. And I recently did a Donnie Darko script reading. Because Donnie Darko, the director's cut, not the theatrical cut. The director's cut is my favorite movie in the planet. And there's a difference between the best thing in the planet and your favorite thing, right? And so Donnie Darko is my favorite movie ever. So recently I did an entire reading of the script, which took it took so long to record and edit and everything, and a lot of effort was put into that. And I just did it because it seemed like a fun idea, and it's interesting to see the comparison between the actual movie and the script. And that's where my love for movies comes in a little bit more. What's interesting to me, again, is that difference between the script and what the movie turns out to be. And so I uploaded that, and then I talked to my buddy Joey Becker, who's been on the podcast a couple times, actually. And I told him about it, and he was like, "Oh, really? You read the script, like just in its entirety?" And I was like, "Yeah," and that was the basis of the entire episode. And he was like, "Dude," he himself went to Wright State for film. I think that was his major. Like, I don't know if it's like a specific job within film or a specific major, but he and my buddy Logan Marshall are both like film connoisseurs or whatever you want to call them, and cinephiles, and. And he was like, "Wow, well, so like as somebody who's really involved in film, like it's important to read scripts because that's part of the job, reading scripts and like understanding how they should look and kind of how they flow and things like that." And he was like, "Wow, that's actually I'm definitely going to listen to that episode because I don't always want to sit down and look at, a 2.5 hour movie and read through it on my phone like a script, but to just throw the script on in the background would be amazing if that was like accessible for a lot of movies." So another podcast idea would just be an entire, like it could be a market within itself, but an entire collection of script readings, which I think would be really interesting. But again, that would take so much time that I don't know if I'm going to be the one to do it, but I'm glad I could be on the precipice of the idea.
I think it's a good idea, and I mean, people listen to it. I literally listened to a podcast over the summer where she just read the Constitution. That was it, just word for word.
Really? Wow. Yeah, no, that does sound interesting. I'm probably gonna look that up now. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the support with that.
Of course. Is there anything else you want to talk about here that I haven't asked you about?
Um, about the podcast. About the podcast. Not really. I mean, I think the idea of podcasting is can be really personal, and I think people, if they want to, I think this leads into people wanting to start their own podcast. I think somebody recently told me that I'm an inspiration for them, which obviously I'm amazing, but which is a joke. I'm not that big of a douche, but I think people that want to start a podcast should start a podcast, because it really, at the end of the day, is not that difficult. The difficulty is consistency and discipline, and being able to upload an episode weekly kind of keeps you on a schedule. And I think that's really important for people's mental health in general, to stay have some sort of structure. And again, like, I've done this through like COVID and the riots and a lot of, I mean, even emotional downfalls that I've had. And it has always, I've never failed. There's been some episodes where I like some weeks where I really didn't want to upload anything, or I didn't have anything to say, or I was just in such a bad place. I knew it was just going to come off as negative, but it was really beneficial, and it's still really, really beneficial for me. Keeps me on track, keeps my mind kind of thinking about ideas for the next podcast, or ideas about who I'm going to have on, and it keeps me wanting to meet people, you know what I mean, and wanting to make interactions and have them on. And again, one of my passions is exploring other people's passions, so it keeps me following in that pursuit of being able to hear other ideas and stuff like that.
I think that was a great closer.
I agree. All right. So that's the end. I just have one question for you. Do you have any super like funny, or any of your favorite stories that you've run in the past 8 years?
Okay, so I don't know if this counts as a story, and I don't quite know. I won't put in any names.
Okay.
So it doesn't get. But it was my junior year, and we were doing the senior superlatives, so like best hair and like best couple and like whatnot.
Right.
And we were doing it in early May, and on April 20th, they had cops come with drug dogs and sweep the parking lot and the lockers, right? And a handful of people got arrested for reasons, and two of the people that got arrested won partners in crime.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome, though. That's great.
It was landslide. There was no contest. Like, that is, I think, the funniest thing the graduating class of 2016 has ever done.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. That's what I was looking for. So awesome. Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate you interviewing me. It's a big deal for me.
Well, thank you for being open for the interview. I kept pestering Mikey. I was like, "Give me Steve's number. I need Steve's number." And finally, he sat down and did it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Well, yeah, I'm glad it worked out, and I love Mikey. I love that man. So I'm glad that you do as well, in a way. I hope, again, I think you're gonna get a job. You're gonna be fine. You got this far already, so I don't think you should worry about that at all.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for taking time out of your day to do this.
Yeah, definitely. All right, good talking to you, Hannah.
Yeah, see you later, Steve.
And just like that, another conversation in the books. For the record, I really want to thank Hannah again, letting me come on her show, The Thread. The Thread magazine, actually, it is really interesting. Like I said, my buddy Stephen Barrett, who's been on the podcast a couple times, actually had a feature there about his fashion company, Creamy, And it's a really cool. I mean, you could tell Hannah's a driven and ambitious person, and I think it shows in Thread magazine. And it's a very well put together project. You should definitely check that out, especially my interview, which goes up at the end of next week. So that'll be around December 10th ish. So yeah, check it out if you can. I There are just so many cool people in this world. We're just surrounded by them. And I'm sorry if you're not. That sucks. Sometimes there are also bad people in the world. But, I think at this point we kind of get to pick and choose, because if you don't want to see somebody, you can just be like, coronavirus. I don't want to talk to new people. You know how that is. Anyways, well, I hope you're having a great week, and I hope you're staying safe. Actually, COVID is getting pretty serious, and, make sure you're washing your hands and wearing masks and doing what you need to do to make sure that, at least you're being conscious of it. That's what I hope. That's what I want most people to think about when they go about their daily things doing this whole thing. And you know what? I recently heard that suffering isn't real. There's experience, and like obviously there's things that happen during experiences that like hurt, like physical pain, stuff like that. But mental suffering is for the most part based off of fear and pain. And pain comes from just comparing everything to the past. Pain comes from a painful experience that you worked through in the past that was hard for you and made you feel uncomfortable or scared or hurt or whatever. And then fear, the other side, is looking into the future, things that you're afraid of, things that might happen or things that could happen, or things that could go wrong. And both of those things are just mentally what you choose to think about or let your brain get off onto. And I mean, obviously it's some woo-woo Buddha stuff or whatever, but I think staying in the present is a cure for that, and at least being conscious of the idea that, oh, I'm thinking of the future too much, or, oh, I'm thinking of the past too much. It's that balance. You hear that word all the time, and I think we should start applying it into other places besides just like nutrition or whatever. But also, I'm 22 years old and I don't know shit, so I do know that I hope that you have a great week and that you continue listening and that you like this show, because I do. And if you made it this far, I assume you do. So anyways, have a good one. I love you. Amen. Okay, thank you. Bye. Drowning in